The hearing room was suffocating, packed with media, aides, Congress members, and a growing cloud of dread that no air conditioner could cut through. Under the relentless glare of the lights, cameras blinked like impatient eyes. Every seat was filled, every corner buzzing with speculation. But all fell silent when Jasmine Crockett leaned forward and adjusted her mic. Her fingers were steady, her face unreadable, but her eyes, they burned with something more than conviction. They carried grief, rage, and clarity. "This isn't about justice," she began, voice calm but razor-sharp. "This is about protection, about covering up what Pam Bondi did, and who helped her." The words didn't just hang in the air. They detonated. On cue, gasps rippled through the chamber. Senators leaned forward. Phones lit up in laps beneath the desks. Reporters scribbled furiously. Crockett had just crossed a line no one dared to touch. Not publicly. Not in that room. Meanwhile, in a secured wood-panelled lounge buried deep in the Capitol's underbelly, Donald Trump stood watching the hearing unfold on a mounted flat screen. His tan looked like paint under the fluorescent lights. His eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched, and then, without hesitation, he hurled the remote across the room. It hit a crystal ashtray, shattering it on the floor. She wasn't supposed to. "Say that!" he roared, pacing like a caged bull. "She was warned." A trembling aide peeked around the doorway, but thought better of entering. Back in the hearing room, Crockett sat poised, unmoved by the murmurs swelling around her. Her statement wasn't a plea or an accusation. It was a sentence. And she wasn't done. This wasn't just politics. It was something darker, personal, buried deep in the corridors of power, and now clawing its way into daylight. Someone was going to fall. Crockett wasn't afraid to push. And Trump knew it. Months before the hearing, before the spotlight burned and cameras chased every breath, Jasmine Crockett sat alone in her D.C. office, lit only by the bluish glow of her laptop screen. Her finger hovered over an email. Attached was a scanned memo, heavily redacted, but not enough to erase the name at the bottom. Pam Bondi. Jasmine didn't blink. She already knew what she was staring at. A pattern had emerged. Quiet settlements, internal transfers, classified notes marked silenced, fund. Someone inside the Department of Justice had been moving money to hush witnesses. One of those voices had belonged to her friend, Eli Mercado, a junior analyst, smart, anxious, honest to a fault. He had trusted her enough to leak a series of documents. 3 weeks later, he was found dead in his apartment. The suicide note was short and strange, too clean. "I couldn't keep running." That was all it said. Jasmine had memorized those words, reciting them every time someone told her to let it go. At the center of that silence stood Pam Bondi, publicly gracious, always smiling for the cameras, with a well-practiced voice of concern. But beneath that polished surface was something colder. She moved like a strategist, calculated and ruthless, protecting her alliances like crown jewels. Jasmine didn't need proof to suspect who orchestrated the settlements, but proof is what she intended to find. The deeper she dug, the uglier it got. She started finding names, people linked to off-the-book transfers, witnesses who suddenly disappeared, and one journalist, Mara Dean, who published a damning piece about government hush funds and was arrested 2 days later on charges so flimsy they couldn't hold paper. "You need to stop," warned a staffer, voice low. "They're watching you." "I'm counting on it," Jasmine replied without flinching. Meanwhile, Bondi doubled down. On cable news, she accused Crockett of inciting violence, pointing to her tweets encouraging peaceful protest at Tesla dealerships. "She's unstable," Bondi had declared with a glint of contempt. "She's dangerous." Behind the headlines, another thread began to unravel. Bondi's aide, Luca Bryn, a thin, jittery man in expensive shoes, began missing days. When he finally showed up one evening, he looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. He slipped an envelope onto Crockett's desk. "I'm not part of this," he whispered. "But if anything happens to me, give them hell." Inside the envelope, a file, unredacted. A direct connection between Bondi, the fund, and a payment marked "Emergency Settlement, Tesla Riot Witness." Jasmine closed the envelope. Her pulse didn't race. She was past fear now. What began as grief had sharpened into purpose, and now she had names. The package arrived without a return address, wrapped in a brown envelope thick with intent. It was left on Jasmine Crockett's front porch. No courier, no signature, just presence. Her breath hitched when she tore the seal and found black and white photographs. Faces half shaded in shadow. One image showed Pam Bondi leaving a private building in D.C., face tilted from the camera, flanked by men in dark suits. Tucked beneath was a series of bank slips, stamped with confidential headers. Disbursements made under Public Stability Initiative. But Jasmine knew what it meant. The shell account used to silence Tesla riot witnesses. And there, in the lower corner of a single slip, Bondi's initials. PB. Slanted, sharp, unmistakable. A hollow feeling settled into Jasmine's chest. Not fear. Confirmation. She took a long sip of her now cold coffee, fingers trembling slightly. They were still trying to bury the truth. Hours later, Bondi flooded the media with a smear campaign. She hit every outlet within a day. Crockett was called radical, dangerous, even un-American. Clips of her speaking about protesting Tesla were cut, remixed, and thrown into echo chambers like digital gasoline. Conservative commentators barked in unison. "She's inciting a mob!" But Jasmine didn't blink. She didn't have the luxury of outrage anymore. She had corpses. In a congressional hallway, dimly lit and unguarded, the two women collided, one by accident, the other by design. Jasmine stepped into Bondi's path like a phantom from her conscience. Their eyes met. Crockett spoke without raising her voice. "How many people have to disappear before you stop protecting him?" Pam didn't pause. She looked past Jasmine, like she was already somewhere more important. Then, casually, she replied, "They weren't important." The sentence hit like a slap. But Crockett stood still. That was all she needed to hear. Then came the blood trail. Whistleblower's roommate Tyler was found dead 2 days later. Official story, overdose. But Jasmine had met him. He didn't even take aspirin. Mara Dean, the journalist, went silent. Her home was broken into, office ransacked. Her hard drives were gone, phone reset. The shadows grew louder. Jasmine began waking in sweat-soaked sheets, her sleep filled with faceless warnings and the echo of Eli's voice. "Don't let them win." Her staff began quitting one by one. Some cited fear. One simply said, "You're next." She kept going, even when she started seeing a silver SUV idling too long on her street, even when her mailbox was pried open. One night, while she stared at the ceiling, unable to rest, her phone lit up. A number she didn't recognize. A voice. Low, raspy, unmistakably male. "Shut her down," the voice ordered. Then, after a pause, "Before she links this to me." She didn't need a caller ID. She knew it was Trump. He wasn't warning Bondi. He was giving her orders, and Jasmine? She was already past the point of silence. Jasmine Crockett's name echoed through the hearing chamber as if the walls themselves were anticipating what she was about to unleash. The energy in the room was taut, silent, reverent like the pause before a verdict. Across from her, Pam Bondi adjusted her blazer, hiding a tremor beneath cosmetic calm. Cameras rolled. Livestream feeds blinked live. America was watching. The chair's gavel dropped once. "Ms. Bondi, you are now under oath." She nodded stiffly, her signature smile thinner than usual. Jasmine didn't move. She didn't smile. Her hands rested firmly on a thick folder labeled in bold, "Classified unredacted material." Without ceremony, Jasmine began. "This is not speculation. This is not political theatre. This is documented truth." She held up a printed bank record, high enough for the cameras to catch. Through this transfer, $3.2 million from the DOJ's Emergency Response Fund was redirected through a shell company operating out of Clearwater, Florida. That company is registered under a trust in the name of Margaret Ann Bondi. Your mother. A soft gasp swelled from the back row. Pam's gaze flickered. Her jaw tightened. But Jasmine continued, voice steady. "We also have recorded testimony. 2 DOJ employees, both protected under whistleblower statutes, who state that Ms. Bondi personally authorized redactions on internal memos regarding the Tesla riot arrests. Their testimonies align, time-stamped, corroborated, a screen lit behind them, playing a blurred but audible audio clip. Pam said we needed the file redacted before the Oversight Committee got it. She said it would kill the fire before it spread." The clip cut. The silence felt like judgment. Crockett dropped the final blow, the unredacted document. "I now submit into the record this original file, never modified, which contains Ms. Bondi's signature, authorizing hush payments to 2 individuals detained during the Tesla protests. One of them was later found dead. The other is missing." Pam's composure cracked. Her pupils darted toward the press box, then to the document as if it might disappear. A thin sheen of sweat glistened at her temples. She opened her mouth, words fumbling out. This is character assassination," she barked, voice rising into a desperate pitch. Jasmine tilted her head slightly. Her tone dropped, slicing through the noise. "Character doesn't need to be assassinated when it's already dead." Bondi blinked rapidly, as if the lights had just turned on in a room she didn't want to be in. Elsewhere, in a private West Palm Beach viewing room, Donald Trump watched the broadcast, surrounded by loyalists too afraid to speak. As the headlines rolled across the screen, "Bondi tied to DOJ payout scandal. Trump campaign implicated in witness suppression." He hurled a gold-embossed mug against the wall, shattering porcelain and silence. "She had one job," he growled, "and she blew it." On screen, Jasmine Crockett remained unmoved. No smile, no triumph, just resolve. The truth didn't need applause. It had finally found daylight. Pam Bondi disappeared like a scandal fading behind a closed door. No farewell statement, no televised defiance. Her law firm severed ties quietly. Her upcoming keynote appearances vanished from event rosters without apology. Within days, the Department of Justice opened a discreet internal probe, one that didn't make front pages, but still sent ripples through the tight circles where secrets were currency. Trump's allies scrambled, spinning tales about infiltrators, about witch hunts and deep state betrayals. But something had shifted. His next rally drew fewer cameras, fewer chants. The air of invincibility had thinned. Jasmine Crockett didn't revel in any of it. She refused interviews, declined victory, laps. Instead, she drove 2 hours in silence to a quiet cemetery just outside Baltimore. She carried a single origami crane, worn soft at the folds, something Eli used to make when anxiety took hold of him like a storm. She placed it gently on the headstone and tucked a handwritten note beneath its wing. You were right. They didn't care until it hurt them. She stood still, wind brushing her coat, eyes locked on a name carved in stone. That night, the DOJ released a statement. Restitution payments had begun for victims surveilled and silenced during the Tesla protests. No press conference, no fanfare. Just a wire transfer and an unspoken admission. Justice, in its quietest form, had finally moved. The storm had passed, but the damage remained. Jasmine Crockett didn't crave applause or vindication. She never had. She understood the cost of truth. It never arrives with fanfare. It crawls in, covered in blood and doubt, forcing you to choose between comfort and conscience. Her voice echoed not in microphones now, but in the quiet corners of conscience. The truth doesn't always roar. Sometimes it bleeds, slowly, quietly, but once it's out, it stains everything it touches. You don't expose corruption to be praised. You do it because silence is worse. Because no one cleans the rot until someone's willing to break the walls. She stepped through the double doors of a closed oversight session, the weight of a folder in her hand and the country's conscience on her shoulders. No smile, no hesitation, just resolve sharpened into purpose. The truth had been dragged into daylight, and Jasmine Crockett was already walking into the next room.